One way of entering the sacred, the deep places of life, is by asking questions, the tough questions. So this week in Melbourne, as we enter another 6 weeks of lockdown, we ask this question: the crowning hypocrisy of a strict lockdown for the towers in places like Kensington and government housing estates, for the people who are the poorest and who have no choice, for example, but to get into an elevator to ride up with others into their apartments in these towers. The hypocrisy of how they're in strict lockdown, and yet the government wouldn't accept help to lock down a hotel in Melbourne, but instead took the cheapest option by hiring workers who allowed people in hotel to go out, to go shopping, and to spread COVID-19 on the evidence. We can ask the question not only of flicking a coin to the beggar on life's Jericho road, but of asking questions about the facade that produces beggars. Our journey to the sacred begins this week at Coburg Uniting by looking at those challenges of COVID-19 and how we can do better with our social uplift. A government that is concerned more with the spread of COVID-19 in government housing than they are with the spread of prosperity in government housing must be challenged. Welcome to Coburg Uniting. As Jimi Hendrix said, knowledge speaks, wisdom listens. Jesus put the same point a little differently. He asked the question, are you listening to this? Really listening? He was not only talking about the story he told of the harvest, but he was also saying by implication, are you really listening to what is happening in your social context? To the people who have been invisible, chained to the lowest rung of the economic ladder. Are you really listening to the depths of your soul? For the deep places in you call out to the deep places in life, and the deep places in life call out to the deepest and best part of yourself. Are you listening? Really listening? Jesus then told the story of the farmer who planted seed, and some of the seed fell in the gravel. Some of it sprouted quickly but didn't put down roots. So when the sun came up and out, it withered away. Some of the seed fell in the weeds as it came up. The weeds strangled the seed, but some fell on good earth and produced a harvest beyond the farmer's wildest dreams. There is a rich harvest, an abundance, and a blessing for each of us if we are really listening to the cry of our souls. One theologian said that when we cry out for justice, when we cry out in pain and bereavement, it is actually God crying out to God's self, that it all occurs within the presence of God, that the cry from our spirit is the third element of the Trinity, God's Spirit crying out to God, the first person, first element of the Trinity, God the Creator. And so it's within the creative dynamic, the creative confluence of the energy at the heart of the universe, which is God as Spirit and Creator. When that happens, that wisdom and that power, against that wisdom and power, evil cannot prevail. And the ground has been prepared for the good seed of justice and of setting things right. People in the towers, for people who have no advocate. This is a story, a devotional reading by an anonymous author I'd like to read to you about listening. And these are the kind of devotional readings we have every Sunday here at Coburg Uniting Church as part of our services. Voltaire said, "Judge people by their questions rather than by their answers. People tend to be very talkative, sometimes if they're fearful or anxious. For some of us, it may be that we've spent too long alone and are dying for company. At other times, we may have things to hide and we talk to cover up. Talking non-stop is one good way to avoid asking the hard questions. It can also keep us from really listening and providing thoughtful answers. We all need to talk, but we also need to take time to be silent. Some theologians have said that silence is the doorway to the sacred. In silence, we can assess ourselves and our position in the world and examine the things we want and need to know. Our faith, our spirituality, can give us the opportunity to sit and be quiet with ourselves and listen to others. And the author concludes with these words: when someone is explaining what inspires them, their bliss, or telling how they have recovered their lives and reclaimed it for themselves, or, for example, when someone is telling their life story, we can learn simply by listening. And later we might formulate the questions we need to ask after we have listened to them deeply, after we have listened in stereo. A good question is worth 1,000 thoughtless words. And we notice that Jesus, in his practiced the rabbinic or Socratic method. He would answer a question with another question to get to the heart of the matter. Do you want to be made well? Who do they say that I am? Who do you say that I am? As a couple of examples. The affirmation at the end of this reading is this, and I commend it to you. I will take time this week to be silent and think about what I've learned about myself and the people around me. This will enhance my life and my recovery and help me to be of service to others and to my passion. So this week I wanted to leave you with this question based on Matthew chapter 13 and the harvest story. The question is, how will you establish a routine to meet the sacred every day? And if that doesn't mean anything to you, look at it like this. The seed, of which Jesus spoke of in Matthew, is the moment of inspiration. It could be the cry of your heart of observing what life is saying to you, of perhaps feeling what you feel, your brokenness or your woundedness. The seed can also be establishing those safe havens within your family where negative stories can be challenged with love and truth. Those environments and safe havens in families and organizations where the negative stories can be twisted and changed by the positives. To take notice of, to observe where those positive stories are already unfolding. It could be a relationship, an experience, or a moment of bliss where you noticed the depth and the value and the meaning of your life was revealed in an instant. What will your routine be to find the sacred every day? What world do you want to build for yourself? How will you avoid falling into pessimism and lack of meaning? To take your toolbox into COVID-19 lockdown and come storming out with renewed power and a vision for what can yet become, for you and for your world. There are a couple of ways we can look at this question. The late great Joseph Campbell spoke of a bliss station. He said, to bring forth what you are, soul, come forth, you need a place of creative incubation, A place where you do not know what was in the newspapers or what was on Facebook or the news. You do not know who your friends are, what they owe you, what you owe them. A bliss station, a sacred place, is where you can experience and bring forth what you are and what you might be. Creative incubation. He said, for most of us, our action is economically or socially determined. And it does not come out of your true life, your inner life, your spirit. But we can change that dynamic and let it come out of our true life, eternal life. There are the claims that the environment places upon you. They can be so great that you don't know who you are or what you are. However, we can find the place, the sacred field, the sacred energy of life, where you listen to your body and your soul, and you go where they want you to go. Another way of looking at this is when we look at our tradition, our Christian tradition, that Jesus was driven into the wilderness. It could be the psychological wilderness of having a breakdown. It could be a wilderness of betrayed trust. The truth of our tradition is that in the wilderness and in Jesus being betrayed by his friends at the end of his life in the Garden of Gethsemane, despite all those bitter arrows fired at his soul, the reality is that Jesus, in him, the drive and the forces towards separation, the temptations to raw individual power, never overcame his unity. His unity between him and his God, between him and others, between him and the best version of himself that emanated from his Spirit. That same power, that communion, is available to us if we establish a routine to find the sacred every day. One man described his journey into the sacred like this, and he described it in terms of his relationships, of reconnecting with that part of himself to which he had been disconnected or separated for so long. And that is at the heart of the religious and spiritual quest, to reconnect with that part of yourself from which you have been disconnected. Your spirit, or in other words, your essential self. And to bring the blessing and vitality of that to others. The seed falling on good ground in our soul. The man described it like this, of his journey into the sacred, what it did for him. He said, relationships work as long as you make each other your priority. When you become mutual caretakers for your happiness. He said an act of love is thinking about your partner's needs. We know that. But this is how he put it in this time of social media. If I want the best from my spouse, he said, she needs me to be there, not just in the house, but times when I am with her. Much is made of us all needing to be busy and rushing off to do things for the sake of doing them. But he said, when I'm in the house, I need to really be together with my partner, rather than in the house doing my own thing all the time, to really have the bonding time, to listen to the language of each other's souls. But he said, in terms of rushing off, I doubt that many people at the end of their lives wish they had done more karate or taken their kids to more footy or more dancing classes. As important as that bonding time is with the child, he said, rather than going to more soccer games or cooking classes with the children, a lot of people wish that they had had more sex, more connection, and more intimacy with another human being, with their partner, and had held on to someone that they loved. Relationships work only so long as you make each other your priority. We will all be at different stages of that. But for this man, the journey into the sacred was his realization that running around only led him across the surface of life and the very surface of his soul. And when he got to the end of his life, he would have wished for more connection and intimacy with his partner. Our journey into the sacred helps us to find perhaps that part of ourselves from which we have been separated and disconnected. The story of spirituality and Christian spirituality is that in all of our alienations, in all of our separations, grace appears. And we are reunited with the ground of our being and the ground of all being, which is the spiritual presence and energy. In the moment of our alienation, it happens sometimes that grace appears and something is overcome. The unity is restored, sometimes with others to whom we've been estranged, sometimes with the larger story of what we can yet become with God's help. Let your journey into the sacred be strengthened and enriched, especially in this time of physical restrictions and social isolation. It can happen if you have the faith that something powerful can happen when you establish a routine every day to meet the sacred, to receive it, and to be blessed. I'd like to finish with a mindfulness meditation. Be at peace. Let your mind and body relax. Let your spirit and your mind be open. Allow to come to your awareness any lack of love or blessing in yourself of which you are aware. Consciously release them. Now allow to come to your awareness the things, the people of life that are most precious to you, and the things of life that are a blessing to you. Receive them. Include your own body, your thoughts, and your feelings as the most precious things of life. Consider that while you have contributed to those things, those good things, the creation of them all was from a source that is far larger than you as a human being. Allow yourself to feel grateful for the source of life and all things. Let that gratefulness fill your entire body. Now hear these words from Isaiah chapter 43. Behold, I am doing a new thing. Even now it springs to life. Do you not see it? The privilege of a lifetime is to consciously live from your divine nature. The privilege of a lifetime is being who you really are. And by that eternal power we name a spirit, present in everyone and everything, you become a blessing to others. It gives you back to yourself and liberates you from yourself. So in that blessing, let your love be genuine. Hate what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another now with family affection. outdo one another in showing honor. And so bear each other's burdens, live in harmony with one another, be of good courage, and may the blessing of God Almighty, the Creator, the Christ, and the good Spirit be with you and those who you love today and always. Amen.